So I'd like to welcome all of you, newcomers and long-timers, to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our opening and welcoming community, we search for truth, love, justice, and joy. I am not Reverend Bill Neely. I'm taking over and holding down the fort for this week. But especially for any newcomers, if you haven't already been to the newcomer table outside, please make time afterwards so we can get to know you and get you caught up on everything happening here at UU Princeton. We have a couple announcements this morning. The first is that directly after service, in this wonderful weather, the Rainbow Ministry will be holding its annual ministry picnic outside, and all are welcome. Any are welcome. We've got a bunch of great dishes going on, and you can meet the ministry folks and learn about all of our activities. And we also have an announcement from the Racial Justice Ministry, who's going to be tabling right outside after service. Racial Justice Ministry is looking for your support for reparations for the harm of enslavement and all of its follow-through. Please read and sign the petition that calls our legislators to action on this matter, which will be delivered to the New Jersey Legislature by Reverend Dr. Robert Turner on Tuesday at the conclusion of a 40-mile walk. So those petitions are available in Robinson Lounge, and you can also come to the Rainbow Ministry potluck picnic, and the petition will be there as well. And in our spirit together in this glorious but humid day, we stand together and we worship together.
Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Langston Hughes. All right, and now join me in the unison affirmation that's printed in your service. This is a congregation of open minds, of helping hands, and of loving hearts. Together, we care for our earth and work for friendship and peace in the world.
Angel of history, ever-revolving spirit of change, may we find comfort, if only, in your constancy. Let us see clearly the path behind us, trodden by our ancestors, both of bone and of story. Let us feel the solid ground beneath our feet and know that they have plowed and harvested, but also know that they left some fields fallow. Let us hear the people beside us in the next room and the next house and the next street and the next town and the next state and the next country. Let us see clearly the path behind us, but have the wisdom to know it may not be our path. Let us make marks, small and subtle, on the trees as we pass by, so that we leave a story to guide those who will one day see us as ancestors. Let us know that we are not alone, that our party together through the woods is ever bigger than we think. Let us step lightly around the next river bend, though we may not know what is to come there. And Spirit, in the silence, we send you the prayers and the meditations of our hearts.
So most people are American by circumstance. They were born here and the flag was already overhead. I am an American by intention. I came from Sudan as an immigrant. That means I got to be American the American way, which is through paperwork. So much paperwork. And over the years, my parents have tried to get me to have pride in their homeland, which I've spent considerable amounts of time in. But they have come to accept that for me, America is my country. And every nation has its myth. So, for example, I'll tell you Sudan's. It's honesty and neighborliness. There's a story about this tourist riding around in a rickshaw, and his bag of money falls out. It's caught by a strong wind current and scatters across the road. Everyone around him, the whole crowded street, starts picking up the money and handing it back to him. And, you know, in the story, when he counts the money later, not a single dollar is missing. America also has a lore. It's what you hear day to day. So it's a free country. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The American dream. So Emma and I are both massive Hamilton fans. And to borrow a line from there, in New York, you can be a new man. There's this sense about America that this place is built wide enough and free enough to let you bloom into whoever you want to become. I'm not saying America always lives up to it, but it's what America set as its standard. This is what it has agreed to be its North Star and measured against. When a country writes their ideals down, it's handing you the ruler. And when you measure, you'll see that we come up short again and again. But we're getting taller. In Seneca Falls in 1848, the Forum couldn't bring itself to include women who look like me. The vote my predecessors cast came generations after it was promised. The freedom to marry who I want is younger than some people in this room. It got here in 2015, and it is still being contested. Every freedom I have came on top of someone else's fight. We're still building toward the top of that measuring stick. Many of these freedoms are still being denied to some, and others are being threatened to be taken back. The work is never only about our own battles. Frederick Douglass, a man who had been enslaved, stood up in Seneca Falls and made an impassioned plea for women's right to vote. That wasn't his fight, but he stood up because he believed that all of our fights are linked. That's the spirit of America. Theodore Parker, and later MLK, said the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. That's given me a lot of solace in the past few years. But the arc doesn't bend on its own. History doesn't march straight, it zigs and it zags. The arc bends towards justice because in every generation, we throw our weight against it. So I stay, I lean, and I keep choosing this country for its promise.
Good morning. So, in my family's story of 1848, sometimes I forget the printing press. Sometimes Otto von Bismarck makes it in there, and sometimes he doesn't. Occasionally I add cows for some reason, though that really makes no sense once you know the story. It's the story of my great-great-great-great-grandfather, I think I got the number of greats right, John Jacob, a resident of Langen. Langen is now in the federal state of Hesse-Darmstadt, constituent in a Germany united for a second time. But nearly 180 years ago, the first unification was decades away, and Hesse was one of the many small states of varying size and even more variant governance that made up the German Confederation. None of this I knew when my mom first told me a version of John Jacob's story, maybe when I was 12 or 13. The version of the story I got then was short and mostly triumphant, that John Jacob believed some things that the local government very much didn't like, and that he made the choice to bring his 3 daughters across an ocean. He would then make a new life in the bustling metropolis of Newark, New Jersey. One daughter would marry another member of the thriving German-speaking community and live in the same 3-story house for over 100 years, until my great-grandma Lucy moved into a nursing home in the late 1980s. As a tween, I think one of the elements that sticks with me about this story was he was given 24 hours to leave with his daughters and his printing press, which is also where I tend to interject the cows or Bismarck, though I now know that the timing really doesn't work on either of those. Much, much later, Mom and I learned recently, Lucy's mother, Minnie, nicknamed Bibi, actually went back to Langen. And then decades after that, my own grandpa, Rick, went back to Germany as well. Grandpa had the door shut in his face. We don't talk about that side of the family. But Bibi actually found a cousin who remembered John Jacob, at least somewhat, who could speak, at least in fragmentary hand-me-down memories, of what that period must have felt like, of what must have been the much, much longer than 24 hours decision to leave a city where centuries of their ancestors had lived, married, farmed, and sang. It is not a decision that someone makes lightly. This I understand a whole lot better than I did at 13. It's a decision that changes the narrative. It's a decision saying that the dream that you have for your family and the dreams of the land you were raised in may no longer be living peaceably side by side. It's a decision that doesn't devalue the previous chapters of your life or your family's, but instead it's a decision that says a page has been turned and a new blank one is yet to be written on. I've been thinking a lot recently about those kind of stories. I love stories and history so much I made it my major in college. I got to spend 4 years exploring how the fictional narratives we tell, mostly on the page, but sometimes on the stage or the screen, reflect the less easily coherent narratives our families and societies are living at the same time. Or, as I joke about my senior college thesis, this is the reason I can't watch Braveheart with normal people anymore. My re-examination of my own family history came a bit more recently with the release of Revolutionary Spring by historian Christopher Clark. The subtitle is Europe Aflame and the Fight for a New World, 1848 to 1849. And it is an ambitious book, suitable for a messy, complicated year. The title intentionally echoes, I think, the popular term Arab Spring for the first half of 2011, where a similar group of simultaneous social and political upheavals also changed a region. Spring always seems to start new chapters, doesn't it? It's the it's the planting season, but also has historically been the fighting season, where the cold in the northern hemisphere lifts, the mud solidifies somewhat, and people find new energy, for good or ill. In the case of Europe in 1848, provocations and last straws in France, in the loose German Confederation, in the Austrian Empire, rocked an authoritarian and aristocratic status quo that had lasted since the defeat of Napoleon. Many, if not most, of the revolutionaries across the continent actually fought with each other as much as they fought against the regimes. But for 6 months, the blank page was visible. A new chapter of the story seems to have begun. But the movement disarray that had briefly allowed various regimes to wobble did not last. And the unity displayed by various democratic or socialist groups in March had dimmed by October. The new page had been visible, but nobody could quite agree what to write on it. Or, importantly, who should do the writing? And I don't know what John Jacob would have written had he stayed, because he must have looked around or looked across the ocean and seen a more promising page waiting for him in New Jersey. A group of stories being written by men and women that he knew, Hessians who became Newarkers, who became Americans. It's always easier to start that new chapter when you have a cast of characters behind you. I swore to myself I wasn't going to quote Hamilton too much in this sermon, but here I have to remind us of the line that echoes out from that stage at the end, in the voice of Philippa Sue and dozens of other Elizas. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? It's the who rather than the what that is the reason the American story keeps getting told, in my opinion. It's the reason it gets retold and edited and expanded. The what is not as interesting to me, honestly. The what is finite and it's incomplete and it's often wrong. See cows or Bismarck. But who gets liberty? Who gets to pursue happiness? Who gets to give their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren a part in the American story? The spirit of 1848 is often associated with Europe, but we don't have to go too far, just one state over, to see it in our own backyard in Seneca Falls, New York. I'll admit to finding this particular inspiration via Wikipedia when I was thinking, I don't want to talk about 1776. What else happened in history in July? The meeting there goes by many names in the history book. Mostly it's known by its location, but the organizers called it, ambitiously, the First Women's Rights Convention. And here again, as in Europe, you could feel a page turning, a new chapter aching to be told. But as in Europe, this was a culmination of many other stories, all at once. Women of many countries had been emigrating to what was now the United States for over 200 years. They were inheritors of not just one tradition, but many. Abigail Adams, Mary Wollstonecraft, Olympe de Gouges, even Hildegard von Bingen, if you want to go back that far. And that's just to name a few of the European ancestresses, leaving a whole bunch of others out. I knew about Seneca Falls well before I was 13, I think, probably from a juvenile biography or something like that, because yet again, my mother made sure to tell me when our family stories intersected with the stories of history. My grandma Lucy comes around again in this story too. Lucy was a very strongly Quaker woman, and her faith guided her social justice work as it did for Lucretia Mott and many of the other Quaker women who came to upstate New York that summer. When I was 13, like learning about John Jacob, I knew the simple version of Seneca Falls, that the declaration of sentiments it produced was influential, that Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony went on to do greater things, that it was the start of an era, music swells, movie ends, thunderous applause. But the spirit moves us never to just leave it there. You know, with that many smart, driven human beings in one place, there must be many more versions of the story to know. There is not one Seneca Falls story, but several hundred being revised. The narrative of Seneca Falls was being rewritten even as the meeting itself was going on, because sometimes you find the blank pages at the end of the book, but just as often you find them in the middle, the glaring gaps where something has been left out or even actively excised. Who tells the story? Who gets to participate? You wouldn't think it obvious now, but apparently the sentiments declared that summer might have been significantly less bold. There was a fervent debate about whether a woman's right to vote should be part of the manifesto at all. But Lucretia Mott and many other women and men argued for it, including Frederick Douglass himself, and the resolution stood. The presence of Douglass alludes also to the fact that the women's movement of that time was not freestanding, not sui generis, but part and parcel of the spirit of 1848 itself, a spirit which included racial justice and labor rights, and at its best, a solidarity as wide as the American spirit could be. We are all American. We all get to tell the story. At its best, it is that simple, and at its best, it is that complicated. As the European Union unity fractured, so too did that of the Seneca Falls summer. It did so, as it partly does often still today, on the basis of race. Activists like Susan B. Anthony, though not only her, could widen their minds to see only as far as rights for women who looked like them, but not further. They wanted to close the book there. Adding the rights of black men and women was a line too far. Who gets to tell the story? Who gets to revise it? And who decides when the revisions stop? Fortunately, those questions are always in contest, even in areas where the fight might seem subtler. The men and women of the Jim Crow, post-redemption South were no less telling and fighting for the American story than Martin Luther King, Fannie Lou Hamer, or Bayard Rustin. The people fighting for immigrant justice in 1920s Los Angeles are the reason that post-1965 immigrants could find their own new page to write on. And they are all of them, the reason that May and I are able to stand in front of you speaking today. All of them. They are my ancestors and my neighbors and my countrymen. They are a part of my American story. Editing them out does no one any good. It is a self-serving revision to pretend otherwise. It is done by small people who need to tear others down to make themselves feel big. I never knew John Jacob, but one of my own bits of selfishness is that I hope, given the success he made for his daughters and himself in coming to Newark, he would be so thrilled to see the neighborhood he helped build welcome new generations of immigrants even today. I hope that the ladder he climbed across the ocean, he would not ever wish to have pulled up behind him. The story continues, pages and pages still being written. I have to admit, when Bill asked if I wanted to preach this month, I wasn't sure. That big 250th anniversary looms large, even and especially here in New Jersey, where the legacy of the American Revolution is everywhere you look. Although, as an alum of Benjamin Franklin Elementary School, I think the man in question would have enjoyed the cross-gender, cross-racial parade of Franklin lookalikes that happened in Philadelphia last week. As May says, patriotism is always a conscious choice that we make, and some days it's a heavier lift than others. To be awake in a time like this is to be especially conscious of the gulf between the happy version of the American story and the version that we're living through right now. Maybe it's a little bit like what those European revolutionaries who survived 1848 felt, such as Karl and Jenny Marx, or those delegates leaving Seneca Falls who, though they had done a remarkable thing, saw all the ways they had still fallen short. Those also involved in the abolition movement may have seen in their own internal racial divisions the specter of what was coming for their country in a little over a decade. But I have always felt that writing a story is also working through whatever drove you to tell the story in the first place. I have tropes and concepts and little things that I love to come back to over and over again, as though through the narrative I process the world and get some of what I need. And so I felt last month, what better way to deal with my unease at the semi-quincentennial than by writing about it? I told Bill, yeah, I'll give a sermon called The Spirit of 1848, and then added in the email a note of draft title to be revised. Like, I'll come up with a better one later. It'll get better. And then I saw that parenthesis there on the page and felt, wait, that's the whole point right there, right? I've told the story of Grandpa John Jacob over and over, probably getting it wrong more than I ever get it right. But I'll still tell it anyway. The older I get, the more I do get right. For instance, finding his immigration papers online last year and confirming that he and his girls did actually leave in autumn 1848. I'll read books of family letters and add the element that our family did eventually return to Longin after 50 years or a century of being very much American. I'll put in the context that I've got immigrant ancestors stretching from the Mayflower to 1890s Lake Ontario over nearly 300 years. But that doesn't make me want to call myself a heritage American, as I am a human being and not a tomato. The spirit lives in the revision. The spirit of 1848 or 1776 or 1919 or 1989 or 1996 is always being revised. I'll keep telling the story of my 1848 over and over again, like we all do. And if we are very lucky, we will get to revise the story outward in ever-expanding circles. Our faith calls us to do nothing less. Keep making newer, grander versions of the play with details that were cut out or cast members who weren't even let in the door the first time around. Keep telling the story. As humans, that's all we can do. But what we are privileged to do is tell it together with our family and our friends and our neighbors. The Spirit lives in the revision. May it be so, and amen. And as we extinguish our chalice, we know that its light connects us until we gather again. Go forth, grateful for the Spirit between you, the breath within you, and the people beside you, and know that you are held always and always, and with everyone else, in that great love of no beginning and never ending. Go in peace, and amen.